Did any of you have this type of like Barbie head that you can style growing up? If you have one, or maybe your kid has one now, yeah, don't listen to this story. So this happened back in the 80s when this lady was a little girl. She was the only girl in the family. She had two older brothers. She mentions how her bedroom was right across from her brother's bedroom, so the doors faced each other. Her brothers did share a room while she had her own bedroom. Also, it's important to mention that the bedrooms didn't have doors. What they would do is put curtains where the door should be. I remember having a curtain on my door once, but that was only because my mom took the door. She took the door to my room. Anyway, she played with this doll head so much that every night when she would go to bed, her mom would pick up that doll head and put it on top of her dresser so that she doesn't play with it all night in bed. So there was one night when the younger brother woke everybody up in that household because he was crying uncontrollably. Obviously, the parents were worried. They ran straight to the bedroom, and when they got there, they asked him what was wrong, why is he crying? And he told them that when he was laying in bed trying to go to sleep, he saw when that Barbie head peeked into his bed. Why did I get chills? The Barbie head peeked into his bedroom from the sister's room. He described it almost as if somebody was holding that Barbie head and just inclined it this way. So I guess like literally, I can't even do the motion. I just scared myself. Anyway, he described it as if like somebody had grabbed that head and inclined it this way, so it looked like it was peeking, which obviously is impossible for that doll to do because it would have fallen. It's only like a head. As he's crying, he's like, she was staring at me almost like she knew I was awake, and she peeked into the room. And it was basically impossible for someone to have hidden behind that Barbie to incline her, because again, she was up against that dresser. Even if it was a little sister, she would have been visible from his bedroom. And to no one's surprise, the parents did not believe him. His older brother that also slept in that bedroom did not believe him either. However, with time, that older brother started to believe because some weird shit happened to him as well. So there was one night where the older brother couldn't fall asleep, and something just told him to look towards his little sister's door. He saw the same thing that his brother claimed to have seen, which is that doll head kind of, inclined looking towards the bedroom. But it wasn't just that. It was not just that. He stared back at her because he wanted to make sure, like, is somebody holding her? Is she really moving? Is it me? And when he is staring at this Barbie's head, he said that the Barbie started making faces at him. He described it as like mocking faces, that like sticking her tongue out at him and doing like silly faces. Bro, that would have scared the I wake up, I turn, I look at my Barbie. The Barbie's like, that's the only thing I could think of. What other faces could she have done? What other faces? That would have scared me. That would have been it. Now that I think of it, that bitch has no arms. You have no arms, bitch. I'm gonna fuck you up. Okay, 34-year-old Letty would have fucked her up, but like 12-year-old Letty would have been dying of a heart attack. He also mentions how her mouth would move in like weird angles, almost as if she was trying to say something to him. And by that point, the little brother had also seen those facial expressions that Barbie was making as well. And of course, the older brother went and told his parents. He wanted to tell them that the little brother was not lying. He also saw that doll moving and making facial expressions, and of course, they didn't believe them. On the contrary, they got in trouble for making these things up. They basically told them, you better not come to us and tell us that the Barbie's moving again, or you'll be in big trouble. What's the punishment? I get to sleep in the room with you? Okay, bitch, punish me. What's the punishment? You're taking me to sleep in a new home? Take me right now. So the parents didn't believe them until one night where the dad stayed up by himself, and when he was walking down the hallway, he felt as if somebody was behind him. Immediately, he turns around to look, and he could have sworn that he saw something peeking from on top of a dresser. The dad could have sworn that he thought it was that doll head that he saw move. You're a liar, you're making things up, and if you bring this up again, you're gonna be in big trouble, mister. Obviously, it was that moment where it finally scared the dad, where the family decided to get rid of this doll head. So where they lived, the trash people only came on Tuesdays and Saturdays, so they had left the trash and that doll head out there, and it wasn't trash day, so it was just gonna sit out there until the trash came. So while the doll was still outside in the trash, their grandmother came for a visit, and as she was passing by the trash, she saw this like perfectly clean and new doll head on top of the trash can. She pulled it out and asked them why they were going to throw it away, and her son, the dad, didn't want to tell her why, so he just said it was because the daughter didn't want to play with the doll anymore. So the grandmother decided that she was going to take it to her home because she had this bedroom that she called the old doll room, and she basically had a whole collection of dolls. She cleaned that doll head up and put put it inside of that room. And surprise, surprise, after she put that doll head into that bedroom, weird sounds would start coming from that room. The lady that's telling us the story, obviously that was her doll, and she said that she personally never heard any noise in her grandmother's room where that doll was, but her grandmother and her aunt did hear noises coming from there. She explains that her cousins would also say that they would hear weird sounds coming from that room. They would spend the night at the grandmother's home, and while they were sleeping, they could almost hear like plastic bumping into things in that room. However, they were already scared of that room altogether since there's like old dolls all in there, and they did not dare to go in there and figure out what that noise was. With time, the mom of the girl was like, I cannot not tell them why we got rid of that doll. So she did end up telling the grandmother and the aunt why they got rid of the doll, and obviously they were like, oh my god, so it has to be that doll that's making those noises in that room. However, the grandmother decided not to get rid of that doll. She obviously did believe in the paranormal, but she was not about to be scared of it, so she decided that she was going to keep it in her house so that no one else has to deal with this doll. By the way, the grandmother lived by herself in that house, so yeah, that lady was not scared of the doll. That doll ended up staying with her until her final days, and the grandmother passed away. So grandmother passed away and left that house to her aunt, and her aunt first day took all of the grandmother's collection, including that doll head, and basically got rid of everything. She says that the aunt never told anybody what she did with it. They have not seen that doll head ever since. Yeah, that is a crazy fucking story. I feel like I would die if I were to see that Barbie head just like blah, making crazy ass faces at me. But what do you guys think? Dear Santa, I don't know if you're real or not, but I'm begging you to bring me a doll for Christmas. If you don't bring me a doll, I will have to ask the devil for it. That was a lot. So there was a lady named Anna, and this happened to her when she was 8 years old back in the 80s. She says that at the time she lived in Mexico with her mom, dad, and her grandmother. At the time, they didn't have a lot of money, and they lived in a very poor neighborhood. Sometimes they didn't even have enough money for the most basic things that they needed at home. She remembers that it was around the holiday season, and she would see a lot of kids out in the street, you know, playing with their new toys and things that are being gifted to them. Even at the age of 8 years old, she knew that she wasn't gonna get anything for Christmas. She knew that her family didn't have enough money to buy gifts. But even with no hope in the world, she still wrote her letter to Santa Claus on the 24th of December. Dear Santa, I don't know if you're real or not, but I'm begging you to bring me a doll for Christmas. If you don't bring me that doll, I will have to ask the devil for it. She says that in her innocence, she thought that by threatening Santa Claus, it would motivate him to bring her the doll that she really wanted. She said that that night they had a family dinner, they ate, and they went to bed. But right before she went to her bedroom, she said that she looked at that Christmas tree and she just begged it to have a gift when she woke up in the morning. The next morning when she woke up, the first thing she did was run to that Christmas tree, and she stood there in shock. She couldn't believe it, and in that very moment she screamed so loud that her grandmother and her parents came running into the living room thinking something had happened. But her scream was of happiness because under the Christmas tree there was a box, and inside that box was a doll. The doll was just as big as her, and it was the most beautiful doll she had ever seen, and she just remembers how her parents and grandmother were looking at her and they were just so happy because she got a doll for Christmas. She said that day was one of the happiest days of her life, but it was only because she didn't know the hell that they were about to go through. As time went on, she started to notice really weird, strange things about the doll. At nighttime, she would always place the doll in the box that it came in because she didn't want it to get dirty. However, every time she would wake up, the doll would be sitting in a chair at the end of her bed. I already have chills. She says that one day her entire family went out and they were coming back home. And when the door opened, every single person saw when the doll ran from the living room all the way to her bedroom. Oh my god, I have goosebumps. Can you imagine? Like every single one of her grandma, her mom, her dad, they all saw the doll run to her room. In that moment, out of like pure terror, her mom fainted and fell to the ground. And her grandmother just started praying. She was also terrified of what she had just seen. In that moment, they can hear where things were falling and breaking inside her bedroom. The dad, with all the courage he had, decided to go in there and check it out. What the dad saw when he walked into her bedroom was the doll sitting in that same chair, and everything in her room just destroyed. That same night, the grandmother confessed to her parents that on December 24th, she took all the money she had, which was only 30 pesos, and she was on a mission to buy a gift for her granddaughter. She was having no luck finding a store or anybody that can help her until she came upon just like a whole bunch of trash. And in that trash was the doll. She couldn't believe that she found like the most beautiful doll just in that trash, and she ran back home to put that doll under the Christmas tree. So the following day, her parents took the doll and they went to go throw it as far away as possible from their home. Unfortunately, the next day, that doll was inside of their house again. She mentions how the next following days, her parents tried a lot of different things to try to get rid of this doll, and it would always come back to their house. But that wasn't even like the worst thing, because they started to experience paranormal things in their home. They would hear footsteps, some things would just like move by themselves, and they started to hear like little kids laughing. The family became desperate and they brought a witch to the house to help them. When that witch saw the doll, she told them that she did not have enough power for what they have in their house. She could not help them. However, she did tell them that that doll was possessed by a demon. She says that her mom, in the desperation to get rid of this doll, ended up going to a church that was around their neighborhood. When she got to the church, she stumbled upon a priest who was lighting up candles or incense, I think that's what she said. And she ended up telling him everything that was happening in their home, and the priest agreed that he would visit their home at nighttime that same day. The priest, his name was Ezequiel Monteverde, and told her that she would go to their house at 8 p.m. And at 8 p.m. on the dot, he showed up to their home. The second that that priest stepped into their home, it got so cold, it almost felt like a freezer inside of their home. The priest walks to her room, sees the doll, and tells her parents that it does not matter how many times you take the doll out, it was gonna end up coming right back. He said it was because the demon that was inside of that doll was very powerful. She said the craziest thing happened. The priest told her parents that the only way that they were gonna get rid of it was to form an exorcism on the doll in order to return the demon back to where it came from. It was the most intense thing that she had ever experienced in her life. She remembers the priest taking out the Bible, taking a cross out, and some holy water. But the priest took 2 hours in the room with the doll, and in the meantime, the lights would flicker, things were moving on their own, and there was also a point where that doll was almost like convulsing by itself. What the fuck? She remembers when the priest finally tells it one last time, "I order you to leave this doll and leave this family alone." She remembers when he said that sentence, all the lights went out. However, there was an immense sense of peace in that home. The priest also kneeled down and started praying, and then just like nothing, stood up, grabbed his Bible, holy water, the cross, and the doll, and left their home. She said that she remembers her mom running to their bedroom and getting like the littlest bit of savings that she had and attempted to give it to the priest, but he was like, "No, I don't need your money, it's okay." So the next day, the mom was so happy that everything had been peaceful in their home that she had gone to the supermarket and brought a lot of fruit. She decided to make like a fruit cup, and she was gonna go and take it to the priest just as a thank you for what he did for their family. When she got to the church, she saw another priest at the door, and she asked him where she could find the priest Ezekiel so that she can give him the fruit. However, the priest was like, "Lady, is this a joke?" And she was like, "No, I would like to give him this fruit as a thank you." And that's when the priest told her, "Lady, priest Ezekiel has been dead for over 10 years.
Can we show him the older homestead?
Yeah, let's go. As you know.
No, it's not. No, it's not. Was that you?
Yeah, that's on either side.
They went to both.
Yeah.
As many of you know, I grew up in deep Appalachia. I now live in Atlanta, Georgia, and there are times where I'll tell my friends stories from what happened to me when I lived out there, and they're like, "What?" I already posted about my UFO story last year, and that video got to like 3 million views. But today, I'm going to tell you guys the story of when I was a kid and I encountered a skinwalker, or at least what I thought was a skinwalker. I hate long intros, so I'm just going to get into the story. The place I lived was a place called Jasper, Georgia. It's right next to LJ. And I lived in the place where the show Squidbillies was based on. And we have a Squidbillies shrine in our town center. I had a friend that I would stay with pretty often, and her family owned a 300-acre farm. And when I say family, it's just her and her mom who live there. And so they have like all these farm animals, and they have different parts of their land that you have to walk through trails in the woods to get through. Like, in order to get to one barn, you have to walk through the woods for like 10 minutes just to get there. So there was one day that I was sleeping over there, and we had been home alone all day. I was probably in 3rd grade when this happened. Some of you might ask why me and my friend were just like 2 3rd graders alone on this farm. And it was because my parents were getting a divorce, and so I needed a place to go, so I pretty much lived with this girl at the time. But back to the story. So my friend's mom was on the way home, but I guess there was like a lot of traffic, or she was running late or something. So she called my friend and she asked her if we could like go down to one of the barns and feed the horses before we went to bed. So at this point in time, it was probably like 8 o'clock. The sun was going down. It was about to be nighttime. You could still see the sun and the light when you're in the open field, but in the woods, it was like pretty dark. Like there was no sunlight. So my friend and I started walking through the pasture to the woods, and she had a flashlight with her. We got to the woods, she turned the flashlight on, and we started walking. We were walking for maybe like 3 or 4 minutes through these woods, so we're about halfway through the trail, and we're just talking about some shit and laughing. And then all of a sudden, my friend just stops talking, and like I was kind of just like looking at her, like as we were speaking. I wasn't really looking in front of me. And then she just like drops the flashlight and starts sprinting in the opposite direction, like back to the house. And so I was like, "You okay, Rebecca?" And because that was her name. And I turn and I see her sprinting, and the flashlight was just like on the floor in front of me. And I was like, "What the fuck?" So I turned back in front of me, and I just see like maybe like 10 feet away this gigantic like white figure. And I didn't look at it for long, but just like the sheer height of this thing, whatever the fuck it was, scared me so badly that I looked at it and immediately was like fight or flight mode. Like I felt danger. So right when I looked at it, I turned the other way and fucking booked it. I was running faster than I'd ever ran before. So fast that I passed my friend, and I was like running and pissing my pants at the same time. Like that's how fucking scary it was. And so I ran all the way back to her house, and in my brain I was like, what is the one place I can hide right now where no one will find me? And the only thing I could think of was like I just ran to the laundry room and I got in the dryer. And so I was just sitting in the dryer, and it was like one of those old school dryers. It wasn't like plastic clear cover, so it was just like a white door that closes it from the front. And so I was just in there. I was like curled up in a ball, and I waited like, I don't know, what seemed like 15-20 minutes. I was just in there covered in piss. And eventually I thought that whatever the fuck was in the woods had like killed my friend. And so I was just crying, and like I was freaking out, but I was also terrified and didn't want to die. So I was just sitting in there. And then eventually my friend walks through the door, and I can tell that she's crying and she's like hyperventilating. She's like like I hear that. And so I opened the dryer, and she's like scared when I open it, obviously. And I was just like also crying, and we hug each other, and I was like, "Where did you go?" And so she told me that she had ran and she got into like this trailer that was kind of near the house, because it was the only place she could think of to hide. And so we were both hiding, and I guess she just like mustered up the courage to run to the main house. And so we were both just like trying to explain what we saw and like put together whatever the fuck that was. And this was like 2008, maybe 2009. So I think I was like 12 or something when this happened, but this was way before like creepypasta or like any of these stories were like even around, so we couldn't even put a name to like what the fuck we saw out there. And so when her mom finally got home, we tried to explain what just happened, and she just like dismissed us, and she was like, you girls are just like overreacting. You guys saw a bear or like a deer or something, which is still terrifying if we saw a bear, but it definitely was not a bear because this thing was like pure white. And in the dark, it's like the only thing you can really see is like, if there's someone standing in front of you with a white t-shirt, like you're gonna see that. But this thing was completely white, and that's all I remember is just like this gigantic, like 7 or 8 foot tall thing just like standing right in front of me, staring at me. And so I'm not friends with this girl anymore. I haven't talked to her in probably like 15 years. But I just remember that story, and I remember being so scared that I pissed myself. And the only thing I could think of that being is like a skinwalker. So maybe that is a skinwalker. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that story. I've never told that on here, so I hope you guys were entertained and enjoyed it, and maybe got scared. But anyways, later this week I'm going to post another story about the Appalachian feral people, because I think I also had an experience with that when I was younger. There was a lot of weird shit that happened. But yeah, thank you guys.
Let me tell you why you shouldn't play with your shadow. Scary story time. So my godfather, he watches my TikToks a lot, and obviously he loved my content, and he's also Haitian. And he called me the other day, and he was like, I have so many stories for you to tell your followers of things that happened to me when I was in Haiti, and this is one of them. So he said he was really young at the time, like he was a young boy, and one night right before his bedtime, he was just playing around, and for some reason he just started playing with his shadow, just dancing with his shadow. He was dancing and dancing and dancing, and he was having a great time. And finally, when it was time for him to go to bed, he went to bed. And this is when it starts. Have y'all ever heard of the Hat Man? The man in the hat that supposedly is in everybody's dream, right? When he was telling me this story, y'all, he didn't even know who the Hat Man was. And I had to tell him, I was like, yo, he was in your dream too? Anyways, he goes to sleep and he wakes up in the middle of the night. He said he was dreaming, but it wasn't a dream. Like like the way it felt, it was not a dream. He woke up, but it was not a dream. I don't know how to explain it. I hope that makes sense. Anyways, he wakes up and there's the Hat Man. The Hat Man walks into his room and just looks at him with this creepy smile. He is terrified, y'all. So then the Hat Man walks closer to him, and guess what he tells him? Come dance with me. Come dance with me. And as he's saying, come dance with me, he's backing up. He's like, come dance with me. Come dance with me. He's backing up, and as he backs up, he gets to the door, he stops. And all of a sudden, my godfather hears drums outside. Now, if you're Caribbean, it's not just like the regular drums, but like the tambour. And if you know tambour, tambour sounds like that was a terrible interpretation, but you get it. And it sounds like there is a party outside. And as soon as the drum starts going, the Hat Man starts dancing right there in front of him. And the dance that he was doing, my godfather said, is so creepy. At this point, he's crying. Like, he's a young boy, and at this point, he is in tears, y'all. And the Hat Man just keeps telling him, come dance with me. Come dance with me. Come dance with me. He's dancing and is telling him, come dance with me. He's dancing. It's like, and it's like a whole lot of people outside. You hear the people outside dancing and partying, kind of like a ritual, right? My godfather is screaming, crying. So then his mom, for some reason, she knew what was going on. I don't know how, but she knew what was going on. She came into that room, took him to her room. Now, obviously, she didn't see anything in the room. It was only my godfather that saw everything that was happening. Oh, but the story doesn't end there. So he goes to his mom's room, and of course he feels a little bit safer, because he's with his mom, so he goes back to sleep. Then he starts dreaming again, but this time the dream was a little different.
What the fuck was that? Bro!
What's going on around you?
I don't know. I'm frozen. I am frozen.
Did the window
Sean.
break?
That's not my mother. So this story happened about 11 years ago. I was a senior in high school at the time, but it is the single most mind-boggling experience I've ever had. It's also important to note that it happened in the middle of December. I'm from Iowa, and the winters here get cold, and it's like that kind of cold, if you get stuck outside, you'll die. That plus snowfall makes everything dead silent. You can hear anything and everything inside the house and even immediately right outside the house. Well, me and my best friend were hanging out in my family's walkout basement, just having a boring winter night playing video games. We were also the only ones home. The reason it was just us is because my mother went from work straight to the bar to grab a few drinks with her coworkers. So me and my friend thought it would be a good idea to break into the family wine cellar and live a little. As we were sitting there opening up the first bottle, I hear the door of the garage open and slam shut. I immediately go, "Oh shit," and start looking for places to hide the bottle. My friend then says, "I thought you said your mom was supposed to be out all night." "She was," I replied. I then heard a few heavy stomps and hear my mother yell out, "Meows and Boo, anyone home?" I yell back up the stairs, "Yep, just hanging out in the basement." I hear a few more steps move from the garage door towards the stairs, and she yells out again, "Can you come up and help me with something? I need you up here." I reply back while frantically trying to find a good place to hide the wine bottle, "Yep, just give me a minute." Then there was silence for about 20 seconds. "Anyone down there with you?" she yelled back in a more concerned, serious tone, in a voice that was slightly off of my mother's. This was the first thing that told me something wasn't right. Our family never cared if anyone was over, as our house was a very open house to all family and friends. And then the voice, it was just wrong. Like it sounded like my mother's, but it was missing something that I couldn't put my finger on. "Weirded out," I replied back. "Just Colton." After I yelled that back to her, I found a good place to hide the bottle, thank God, and began walking up the stairs to the next level. Now, as I was walking up the stairs, I couldn't help but feel the overbearing silence of the house, the slight electricity, that something isn't right. When I got to the top of the steps, I look over to where the door of the garage is, and also the kitchen right next to it, and it's black. Pitch black. All the lights were off. There was no moonlight shining through any of the windows. I walked over to the kitchen yelling, "Mom, where are you?" There was no reply. Just silence and darkness. I feel the electricity turn into full needles. My adrenaline kicking in full force. I have to get out of here as fast as possible. My mother is not home. I run back down the stairs, grabbing my coat along the way. "What's wrong?" Colton says. "My mom's not home," I reply as fast as I can, looking for my truck keys. "What do you mean? You were just talking to her." I could see the confusion in his face. "There is no one home. We need to leave now." I took a few steps towards the back door that opens up to the yard, and then I see my dog shaking on the couch and my cat growling behind it. I couldn't leave them. I just knew that if we left, something would happen. "Are we leaving?" Colton said, still confused as hell. "No, I can't leave them here. Something is really off. I'm going to call my mom and figure this out." I pull out my phone and I call my mom. She picks up immediately. "Meows and Boos, what's going on?" she answers. "Mom, were you just home? I heard you yelling for me from the second level, and when I went up there, you weren't there," I said frantically, hoping that she was just playing a joke. "No, I'm just leaving the bar. I wasn't really feeling very well. Are you doing okay? What do you mean you heard me?"
I fill her in on the whole situation. She rushes home. Colton and I stayed in the basement with the animals until she got home. But before she did, you could hear something upstairs. Not walking or sitting on things, but a pressure in the air. Like a black hole was slowly moving from room to room. The word that I could describe it is only as if it was hungry, as if something was hungry and impatient. When she got home, you could feel the thing leave just as quick as it came, like an overbearing predator presence just flown away. We still have never figured out what the hell was going on, and this is just one story of many unexplainable things that has happened to us. But this is the easiest to write down and the one that I was happy to have a witness to. My mother has passed away now, sadly, and I've moved away to Arizona, so very less cold. But whenever I go back to Iowa and I see Colton, he still gets creeped out about what happened that night. I will never truly know what happened, but I know that whatever it was that had my mother's voice, it was evil and it was hungry, and that was not my mother. Good night.